When I was so hungry that I chewed on snow, I met two immortals. One of them was very beautiful and liked me, giving me candy to eat, but I opened my mouth and called her mom. The other was also very beautiful, but disliked me, snatching the candy from my hand and shouting, "Lu Qing, you're recklessly giving immortal pills to mortals again." Then he sneered and said, "Lu Qing, this dirty little brat sees you as her mother. You're not actually going to raise her, are you?" He angered the immortal who had a crush on me. 10 years later, I was just about to bow in marriage. A beautiful immortal burst through the door. A spell was cast, turning me back into a baby. "Your mother is really angry this time. Come, keep your father company to cheer up your mother." Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. Of the candies that beautiful immortal gave me back then, I secretly hid one in my mouth. After the two immortals drifted away, I swallowed half of it and survived that winter. And the following winter, I found a boy covered in blood at the foot of the cliff. When he woke up and saw me, he blushed, coughing up blood while rushing to help me with work. He said that when we grew up, he would marry me, promising a lifetime together as one. I believed him and gave him the remaining half of the immortal pill. But when we both grew up, he said to me, "I have reached the golden core stage. And you are merely a mortal woman, Guya. I can take you as my concubine, but first you must kowtow to Miss Lu. I was born an orphan, with no father or mother. At this moment, I am wearing a red wedding dress." Upon the high hall sat that Miss Lu. She was dressed in a misty silk skirt, embroidered with pure white hibiscus flowers. But today was supposed to be the joyous day of my wedding to Nai Zifang, when he would fulfill his promise to marry me. I lifted my red bridal veil and looked at Nai Zifang, who was also dressed in groom's attire beside me. His face was still handsome, with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, but there was a hint of weariness between his brows. Meeting my gaze, Nai Zifang's eyes trembled violently. He averted his gaze, his voice strained. "Miss Lu is kind and benevolent. When she becomes the mistress in the future, she will surely treat you well. Guya, be obedient." I turned to look at Lu Chuchu in the main seat. Ning Baicheng, the daughter of the Lu family, encountered a mid-level demon beast while traveling away from home and was saved by Nai Zifang at the risk of his life, leading her to fall in love with him at first sight. She repeatedly tried to bribe me with spirit stones to leave, but was coldly rejected by Nai Zifang. It wasn't until they entered Ningbai City that the Lu family formally expressed their gratitude to Nai Zifang. As a prominent cultivation clan, the Lu family was exceedingly generous in their rewards. Countless spiritual pills, rare medicines, and magical artifacts, treasures that cultivators could only dream of, were lavishly bestowed upon Nai Zifang. In the end, they even assisted Nai Zifang in successfully breaking through his bottleneck, allowing him to advance directly to the Golden Core realm. Only I know how desperately Nai Zifang wanted to become stronger, but I never imagined the way he would achieve it was by abandoning me. At the head seat, Lu Chuchu curled her lips into a faint smile. She waited so calmly for me to kneel and bow to her. The one who came later. "What, didn't you hear what Brother Zifang said? A mortal woman without even a spiritual root being allowed as a concubine is already my magnanimity." Lu Chuchu clearly had anger simmering inside, yet she forced herself to act magnanimous. "Kowtow to me, present the concubine tea, and only then will you have one foot through the Lu family's door. Or is kneeling to me, a mid-stage chi refiner, beneath a mere mortal woman like you?" Yet I remained standing straight, refusing to kneel. "Nai Zifang," I pointed at Lu Chuchu, whose expression was beginning to darken in the main seat. "What does it mean for her to sit there? What does it mean for me to kneel to her?" Nai Zifang closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, the complexity in his eyes had faded, leaving behind a stillness that bordered on indifference. "Guya, don't be willful. I was the one who brought you out of that deep mountain, and you know me better than anyone. I need power, you need support. This is already the best outcome for both of us." He paused, then softened his tone slightly. "Besides, even as a concubine, you are still the wife in my heart. Why must you care so much about a mere title?" I stared at him steadily, unable to speak. Ungrateful wretch. I was raised by a she-wolf in the mountains since childhood, and even speaking was taught to me word by Nai Zifang. I'm not good with words, but my hands are quick. I lifted my hand and flipped off the bridal veil, tossing it to the ground. Then I reached out to poke Nizafang's mouth and dig at his throat. Ingrate, give me back that half of the elixir, spit it out. Logically, as a cultivator, if Nizafang had intended to avoid me, a mere mortal like me wouldn't have been able to touch him. But Nizafang didn't move, staring at me in a daze. Letting me pry his mouth open. What are you doing? Lu Chuchu, seated in the main position, grew anxious, stood up, and threw the teacup beside her at me. The tea instantly splashed onto the back of my neck, scalding and painful. Lu Chuchu shouted angrily, "You ungrateful madwoman! Brother Zafang kindly took you as his concubine, and you dare to lay hands on him. Guards, drag this wretch out for me, beat her hard." The servants were about to swarm forward. The next second, the hall door swung open of its own accord. Without a breath of wind, a figure entered, silhouetted against the light, moving with an ethereal grace. He was clad in a long black robe, his unbound ink-black hair tracing a smooth arc through the air. Lu Chuchu was the first to snap back to her senses, demanding sharply, "Who are you? How dare you barge into the main hall of the Lu family?" Yet the man acted as if he hadn't heard her words. An invisible barrier of energy kept the servants at bay, preventing them from getting any closer. Then he leisurely walked up to me. With a light flick, he brushed away my hand that was holding Nizafang's chin, and those eyes. I stared at him in a daze, gazing into those captivating peach blossom eyes. TSK, look how dirty this little face is. He looked me up and down, his gaze finally settling on my eyes. "So, you little brat, still want to go through with this marriage?" I instinctively glanced at Nizafang, who was frozen motionless under the pressure. I saw the shock and confusion in his eyes, along with a hint of, fearful. "Senior, please wait." Nizafang struggled to make a sound. I also averted my gaze and shook my head. "I'm not getting married." The moment the words fell, a golden light struck down from above my head like lightning. I heard Nizafang shout my name, but I didn't feel any pain at all. When I opened my eyes, the whole world seemed to have magnified. I looked down at my small, delicate hands submerged in the red wedding dress. Then I looked up and met Nizafang's constricted pupils. Guya, and immediately after, my whole world spun into chaos. Without a word, the Immortal scooped me up from the ground and effortlessly slung me over his shoulder, as if I were a sack of millet. Then he drifted away with me. The Immortal who had snatched me said his name was Wen Yunjian. It was he who used magic to shrink me. Fortunately, the spell isn't permanent, and my mind remains unaffected, at least, so far. Beyond that, when Yunjian refused to say anything more and instead began questioning me. "Hey, you dirty little brat, do you know what that immortal pill Lu Qing gave you back then was?" I was still being carried over his shoulder, my stomach pressed against the hard bone. When Yunjian walked as lightly as a swallow in flight, yet my stomach felt as if it were being punched over and over again. I shook my head in disgust, holding back nausea. I don't know, my voice had changed too, sounding childish and soft, yet my tone lacked any trace of a child's innocence or cheerfulness. When Yunjian clicked his tongue, what a waste that was, but he stopped halfway through his words, probably thinking I wouldn't understand even if he finished. "Forget it. What's the difference between feeding you and feeding a dog, even with the greatest treasure?" When Yunjian leaped over a stream several zhong wide. "So, did you eat it all later? If you did, you shouldn't be this weak." I wanted to say I did, but I had saved it and only took a small bite. Later, the majority of it was given to that ungrateful Nizafang, and this time, as soon as I opened my mouth, I vomited with a wah. When Yunjian's body instantly stiffened, then, with a lift of his hand, he directly threw me into that stream. My new clothes. I'm a good swimmer, but now that I've turned into a child, my short arms and legs have no strength. The oversized wedding dress I was wearing became as heavy as lead the moment it got soaked. I struggled a couple of times and quickly sank. Just when I thought I was about to drown alive, a force lifted me back to the surface. Then, a warm current flowed into my body. It circulated through my meridians, forcing all the stream water I had swallowed in my stomach out. I opened my eyes and hazily saw Wen Yunjian in front of me. The vomit on his back had been cleaned with magic. Not only that, but his clothes seemed to have changed in the blink of an eye, though they were still black. TSK, mortals are so fragile. Hey, Hey, you're not dead, are you? He crouched down and patted my face with a measured touch. It felt less like concern and more like an impatient confirmation. I shook my head with difficulty, curling up in my wedding dress, shivering so hard my teeth chattered. Seeing this, Wen Yunjian was taken aback at first, then his eyes lit up. Not bad, this looks good, your pale little face, trembling all over, you look so pitiful. That stubborn Lu Qing is sure to soften up even more. As he spoke, he raised his hand and used magic to summon a cool breeze, drying me off completely. Listen, kid, when you see Lu Qing later, don't say a word. Just grab his leg and cry as hard as you can. Got it? Cry until he forgives me. The bitter, fishy taste of water still lingered in my throat, and I finally managed to squeeze out a faint voice. Forgive, you, did you, make him angry again? When Yunjian was taken aback by my question, his peach blossom eyes, usually lazy with a smile, narrowed, his gaze turned into a cold, deep pool, the depth of his eyes unsettling to the heart. Being stared at like that by him, I shivered for no reason. He then reined in that coldness and sighed. I suppose so, I just wiped out an annoying village, and as a result, Lu Qing stopped talking to me. When Yunjian lowered his peach blossom eyes, this time, he seems truly angry. He's cut off all contact with me, destroyed and burned every magical artifact, every token, everything I've ever touched, leaving me with no way to find him. What a cruel heart. At the end of that sentence, his voice lowered, trembling slightly. But that fragility lasted only a moment. When Yunjian stood up again, looking down at me from above, so, I thought of you, that little kid back then who was so bold, couldn't even speak but knew how to call mom. Lu Qing's perpetually icy face almost cracked. If I hadn't spoken out of turn, he might have really ended up raising you. When Yunjian hoisted me onto his shoulder once again, it's not too late to start over now. I went through a lot of effort and pulled countless strings just to get a meeting with him. Later, you better be sharp, cry a bit more pitifully, and beg him to forgive me. He walked away as lightly as ever, his tone just as airy. Otherwise, I'll kill you, understand? I closed my eyes and nodded, understood. There was someone in the pavilion. It was a man dressed in white, his robes whiter than snow, untouched by a speck of dust. He sat quietly in the pavilion, exuding an aloofness that kept others at a distance. When Yunjian swallowed hard, stopping his steps several yards away from the pavilion, he stood there as if blocked by an invisible barrier. When Yunjian gave me a push from behind, "Go," I immediately stumbled forward a few steps, eventually collapsing in a disheveled kneel at the feet of the white-robed immortal. As soon as I lifted my face, tears began to fall. The immortal in the stone pavilion met my tear-streaked little face and clearly froze in surprise. A trace of confusion flickered in his cool, detached eyes, as if he didn't recognize who I was. I crawled forward a few more steps on my knees and gently tugged at his snow-white robe. "Mother, mother." Lu Qing trembled at the sound, as if remembering something, his dark eyes softening. He reached out his hand, his movements incredibly gentle, and helped me up from the ground. "Is it you? How did you?" But when Lu Qing's gaze swept past me and landed on the figure outside the pavilion, the ice that had just begun to thaw froze over again in an instant. When Yunjian, Lu Qing frowned. "What do you mean by that?" Outside the pavilion, when Yunjian coughed awkwardly, avoiding Lu Qing's direct gaze, clearly wanting to make amends, yet stubbornly clinging to a proud posture so contradictory. "Ahem, didn't you quite like this kid back then?" When Yunjian's voice feigned nonchalance, "Actually, back then, I was just sharp-tongued. In my heart, I was quite concerned about this child. All these years, I've been secretly looking out for her, sending her food and drink. Otherwise, how do you think she managed to survive until today? Liar." I lowered my gaze, and when Yunjian only grew more enthusiastic with his lies, "You have no idea. This child was recently deceived by a heartless man. That scoundrel climbed up to some wealthy family's daughter, and the two of them teamed up to bully her. Just today, I happened to run into them trying to force her to become a concubine. Do you think I could stand for that? So I snatched her back and brought her to see you." After saying this, when Yunjian looked at Lu Qing with his peach blossom eyes full of anticipation, like a big dog wagging its tail, waiting for its owner's praise, and Lu Qing's beautiful brows furrowed, his gaze shifted between me and Wen Yunjian. as if trying to discern the truth of those words. Finally, he lowered his eyes, his gaze settling back on me. The frost in his eyes had completely melted away, leaving only gentle concern. Absurd. How could such a young child be married off? I was taken aback for a moment before I finally processed it. 10 years, for an immortal like him, it was far too brief, as fleeting as the blink of an eye, so much so that when he saw me, magically shrunk by Wen Yunjian. He didn't even find it strange at first. Child, is what he said true? Lu Qing asked me again in a gentle voice. I could clearly feel Wen Yunjian's gaze fixed on my back. It was a threat. As long as I said a single yes, I could survive. I took a deep breath. No, that's not it. I lifted my head, looked into Lu Qing's eyes, and said with all my strength, he forced me, saying that if I didn't cooperate with him, he would kill me. No sooner had the words fallen than the gaze from behind turned as cold as the eternal ice of the far north. A biting, palpable killing intent stabbed sharply into my back. Lu Qing's expression darkened as well. He gently pulled me behind him, shielding me from Wen Yunjian's devouring glare. Wen Yunjian. He stared coldly at Wen Yunjian outside the pavilion, his voice devoid of any warmth. I've told you long ago, your heart is made of stone. You simply don't understand what it means to be human. You treat human lives as worthless grass, acting on whims without the slightest restraint. If you persist in this delusion, sooner or later you will fall into the demonic path, and by then, there will be no turning back. The wind outside the pavilion seemed to have stilled, the lingering mist and clouds frozen in the air. When Yunjian's once arrogant and domineering aura gradually faded, leaving only a wretched and dispirited demeanor, yet even so, he still muttered defiantly. I was just trying to scare her a little. I didn't actually do anything. Seeing that Lu Qing remained unmoved, when Yunjian took a small step forward, I'll change. All right. He stared straight at Lu Qing. Lu Qing, don't ignore me. But I don't believe you, Lu Qing coldly interrupted him. Wen Yunjian, I've watched you for far too long. I know you better than anyone. Your so-called change is just a passing whim. You would even threaten a defenseless child. How can I possibly trust you? As for our friendship, let it end here. From now on, we are strangers, and there will be no more. No. When Yunjian suddenly erupted, at the very moment he roared, I felt a blur before my eyes. A fierce gust of wind rushed toward my face, making me instinctively close my eyes. When I opened them again, I was no longer behind Lu Qing. When Yunjian's hand clamped onto my arm like an iron vice, roughly pulling me to his side, as if clutching the last piece of life-saving driftwood. Seeing this, Lu Qing's eyes blazed with fury, and the aura around him instantly turned sharp. The mist by the pavilion churned and surged under the force of this aura. When Yunjian, let her go. I won't. When Yunjian shouted at Lu Qing, pleading urgently, I can change. I really can change. Lu Qing, look at me. I can take care of her. I can prove it to you. His voice grew softer, and his eyes even reddened slightly. I will never fall into demonic ways. Lu Qing, believe me one more time. Please. All right. Lu Qing was stunned. The silence in the pavilion lasted for a long time. Finally, Lu Qing's gaze fell back on my face. A clear sense of guilt surfaced in those icy pool-like eyes. Guilt for having dragged me into this conflict. All right, a single word, softly uttered from Lu Qing's lips. He said to Wen Yunjian, I give you 1 month's time. 1 month from now, I will come back to ask her again. If she says a single no, or shows the slightest sign of unhappiness, Wen Yunjian, we are enemies for life. After Lu Qing left, Wen Yunjian remained frozen in place, his hand still outstretched. It's always like this. He lowered his hand and gritted his teeth, saying, always acting so high and mighty, full of pity and compassion. How dare he say that about me? What's wrong with me slaughtering a village? Are the lives of a few ants really more important than my mood? But he didn't dare say it out loud, as if afraid that Lu Qing might hear, and this pent-up anger soon found an outlet. When Yunjian grabbed me by the collar and lifted me off the ground, you little beast, my vision suddenly went airborne, finally settling on his gloomy face. You're really something. A killing intent 100 times more intense than before pierced through every fiber of my being. My body trembled slightly, driven by a child's instinct. I couldn't help but cry out, it hurts. Hurts. Wen Yunjian sneered, "Ha, does it hurt already?" His hand gradually tightened, as if trying to crush my throat. "You ruined my plans. If it weren't for Lu Qing, do you think you'd still be breathing right now?" And I looked into his peach blossom eyes, and then, whoa, I suddenly burst into loud, unexpected wails. "Mother!" The child's cry was loud and piercing, with a quivering, twisting tone that echoed through the skies. Wen Yunjian was taken aback at first. I never expected I would react like this. Then he immediately covered my mouth, guiltily looking around. He was really afraid I would cry Lu Qing back. "Shut up!" Wen Yunjian scolded in a low voice. The bamboo grove outside the pavilion suddenly rustled violently, as if someone were about to return. "Damn it! I told you to shut up." "But I won't, I'll just cry. After all, I'm just a child now." My tears and snot smeared all over Wen Yunjian's palm, clearly trying to cry Lu Qing back. Seeing this, Wen Yunjian felt both disgusted and guilty. He wanted to push me away, but was afraid that Lu Qing would appear the next second and cut ties with him. He simply lifted me by the tip of my foot, and his entire figure turned into a blur. When Wen Yunjian finally came to a halt, an extremely magnificent cave dwelling appeared before my eyes. Wen Yunjian strode straight in, carrying me, and tossed me onto the ground covered with a white tiger pelt. I tumbled twice before barely coming to a stop. Wen Yunjian turned around and rummaged through his storage artifact. A moment later, he pulled out a pile of silk skirts and tossed them all in front of me. At a glance, they were all top-tier cloud brocade and Suzhou embroidery. Wen Yunjian lifted his chin. "Stop crying. These are all yours now, wear them." But I didn't move, sitting in the pile of clothes and crying so hard I was gasping for air. Then Wen Yunjian could no longer hold back his anger. "Shut up, I didn't actually kill you, and I even gave you new clothes to wear. Don't think that just because Lu Qing is protecting you, I won't dare to touch you. Believe it or not, I'll turn you into a living puppet right now, so you can never cry again." I was so scared that I shrank my neck inside the overly large wedding dress. But my mind was not that of a child after all. I'm sobbing. I stammered, You're an immortal. Then Lu Qing is also an immortal. If you cheated, wouldn't he notice? And if he did, would he still pay any attention to you?" Wen Yunjian stared at me gloomily for a long while. "What do you want to stop your wailing?" I sniffled. I'm hungry." Wen Yunjian rolled his eyes, but eventually fished out a small jade bottle from his magical tool, poured out a pill, and tossed it to me. "Here. A fasting pill, 1 pill, and you won't feel hungry for 10 years. His tone was as if he were shooing away a stray dog begging for food, and that pill looked especially huge in my small palm. I brought it to my lips and tentatively pressed it with my teeth. It was as hard as a rock. I silently tucked the pill into my sleeve and raised my head again. I looked at him without saying a word. We stood in a stalemate like this. In the end, it was Wen Yunjian who gave in first. "What exactly do you want?" he said through gritted teeth. "I want to eat, something hot, the kind ordinary people eat." When Yunjian's temples were throbbing, he took a deep breath, another, and then another. Then he grabbed me and turned to leave, moving as fast as the wind. This time, he didn't rudely sling me over his shoulder but instead tucked me under his arm. When we landed again, we were already in a mountain forest. Night had fallen, with the chorus of insects rising from the woods and a full moon hanging above the treetops. When Yunjian used magic to start a fire, the flames reflecting on his handsome yet extremely displeased face. Then, he disappeared for a moment. When he returned, he was carrying a cleaned wild rabbit. When Yunjian skewered the rabbit on a branch and set it over the fire to roast, but he clearly had no experience with this. His fire control technique was a complete mess. The flames flickered wildly. Now too high, now too low. In no time, one side of the rabbit was charred black, emitting an unpleasant odor, while the other side was still raw. I sat to the side, hugging my knees, watching him fumble around in a fluster. In the end, when Yunjian gave up and tossed the half-cooked thing over to me, "Eat it." The rabbit landed on the grass in front of me, rolled over once, and just happened to get smeared with a patch of bird droppings. I didn't touch the filth on the ground, but instead raised my head and cleared my throat. "War, mommy." When Yunjian covered my mouth with his hand, "Shut up, I'll just roast another one." With that, when Yunjian went off grumbling to catch another rabbit. This was probably the first time in his life that he had been so thoroughly controlled by a being countless times weaker than himself. Immortals are immortals after all. They learn everything with incredible speed. The next evening, when Yunjian stood before me with a stern face, holding a golden, crispy rabbit, my eyes instantly lit up, and I couldn't help but swallow my saliva. Wow, it smells so good, so impressive. Heh. When Yunjian let out a cold laugh, turned his back, and walked away. Then, within an hour, he roasted a new one for me. Wow, this one smells amazing too. So impressive, but I'm almost too full to eat it. Heh. Another half an hour later. Wow, this is amazing. Heh. So within 5 days, almost all the rabbits in the mountains had been roasted by Wen Yunjian. I had truly had enough of rabbit meat and was thoroughly tired of being cooped up in the cave dwelling. Besides, I still needed to go find Nai Zifang. He owes me, he is in my debt, and he must repay it all. So I tugged at Wen Yunjian's sleeve. Looking up, Immortal, I want to go out. When Yunjian was meditating and didn't even spare me a glance. Get lost. I released the hem of his robe. Immortal. You promised Immortal Lu Qing that you would take good care of me, but if you keep locking me up like this, then when Immortal Lu Qing asks me a month from now, I probably won't be able to say a single good word about it. When Yunjian immediately opened his eyes, a murderous intent blazing forth. You dare threaten me? I looked into his cold, peach blossom eyes. Well aware that this murderous intent was no joke, I quickly put on a flattering smile, deliberately softening my voice to sound sweet and cooing. Immortal, how would I dare threaten you? I just heard that Ningbai City is having a gathering these next couple of days, and foreign merchants are bringing a very special kind of fabric, said to be woven from crow feathers. When you hold it up to the light, it looks black, but it shimmers with a rainbow-like glow, so beautiful. And Nai Zifang and Lu Chuchu are still in Ningbai City. As I spoke, I secretly observed Wen Yunjian's expression. After spending these days together, I noticed he changes his clothes several times a day. All of them are different styles of black robes, made from top-quality fabric. Sure enough, when it came to beautiful clothes, Wen Yunjian's eyes showed a slight flicker of interest. What a hassle, he muttered under his breath. Yet, he finally stood up and tucked me under his arm. Done. Returning to Ningbai City, it was just noon. The market was bustling with noise and activity, with a constant flow of traffic. Yunjian Wen's strides were long and swift, his peach blossom eyes scanning the stalls on either side. As for me, he had set me down to walk on my own, clutching the hem of his robe. My short little legs were nearly worn out from trying to keep up. Immortal, slow down a bit. But Yunjian Wen's attention had already been captured by a stall adorned with magnificent feathered fans. I only felt a sudden emptiness at my fingertips, and when I looked up again, that dark corner of his robe had already merged into the crowd. My heart sank. It wasn't that I was afraid Wen Yunjian would abandon me, I was afraid that madmen wouldn't be able to find me and would think I had run away. Who knows if he'd go on another rampage and slaughter the whole city again. Just as I was feeling at a loss, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure out of the corner of my eye, not far away. By a candied hawthorn stall, Lu Chuchu was smiling brightly as she held up a skewer of the sweet treat. She stood on tiptoe and affectionately fed it to Nai Zifang, who was standing beside her. Nai Zifang's profile was as handsome as ever, but as he lowered his head slightly, his gaze held a tenderness I had never seen before. Unbothered by the world around them, they were lost in each other, as if nothing else existed but the two of them. My being robbed seemed to have no effect on them. No, perhaps my departure only made their love more complete. They looked so well matched, a talented man and a beautiful woman, like the perfect couple written in storybooks. And then there was me, Guya, who had depended on him for survival in the mountains, and used half an immortal pill to save his life. Like a wild duck in the mountains, it's hard to enter the Hall of Elegance. I am merely a stepping stone on Nai Zifang's path to immortality. One that can be discarded at any time. A chill shot from the soles of my feet straight to my heart, colder than when Yunjian threw me into the stream. At this moment, a large hand suddenly reached out from above my head, covering my mouth and nose. Immediately after, another arm wrapped around my waist, lifting my entire body off the ground. Immortal. Just as I was about to cry out, a cloth with a pungent odor was pressed against my mouth and nose. The scene before my eyes began to spin. And my body went limp. At the last moment of consciousness, I saw Nizafang's figure disappear around the street corner. He never looked back. I don't know how long it took before I woke from my daze. A man with a face full of rough, burly features was crouching in front of me, unbuttoning my clothes to inspect the goods. Seeing me open my eyes, the human trafficker was clearly taken aback. "Hey, you're awake already, that's strange. This knockout incense from the western regions, even a grown man would sleep for a full day and night after smelling it." But he didn't overthink it, then bared a set of yellowed teeth. "Little girl, if you behave, I won't hurt you. Once we get to Pleasure Grove, I guarantee you'll live a life of luxury, Happy Forest." That was the most famous brothel in Ningbai City. Without hesitation, I bit down hard on the hand that was unbuttoning my collar, then kicked him square in the knee. "Ah!" The human trafficker yelped in pain and flew into a rage. "You bitch, how dare you bite me?" He grabbed me as I tried to flee and slapped me across the face. Ooh, my neck nearly snapped, my ears rang, and the metallic taste of blood spread in my mouth. "You ungrateful little wretch." The human trafficker seemed still unsatisfied, grabbing my hair and dragging me up from the ground to slam me against the wall. "Just wait, I'll sell you to the lowest brothel today. Let those filthy labourers have you." Oh, before he could finish his words, a tall shadow loomed over, completely engulfing both me and the trafficker. "Who are you planning to sell to the brothel?" Just then, the light at the alley entrance was completely blocked by a tall figure. The human trafficker hadn't even processed what was happening when he turned around and cursed. "Damn it, which blind fool dares to block my way to fortune?" Then, he saw a pair of eyes. A pair of peach blossom eyes that held a cold, mocking smile, yet were deadlier than any blade. He hadn't done a thing, yet an invisible, overwhelming pressure surged through the confined space like a tidal wave. The human trafficker's face twitched involuntarily, his legs went weak, and he almost knelt on the spot. Who are you?" When Yunjian ignored him, his gaze passed over the trafficker and landed directly on me. When his gaze fell upon my swollen cheek and the trace of blood at the corner of my mouth, the air seemed to freeze. Even the dust brushing the ground carried a biting chill. "Immortal, immortal." My throat tasted of blood, my voice hoarse. "He hit me, it hurts so much." When Yunjian smiled, before anyone could even see how he moved, the human trafficker's eyes widened in terror. Crack, crack. The human trafficker's legs kicked feebly in the air, his face turning a purplish red from lack of oxygen. When Yunjian smiled as he watched him, while his other hand slowly, almost in slow motion, formed a hand seal. The next second, the hand that had slapped me was as if sliced by countless blades. Flesh and blood instantly turned to a mangled mess, with white bone piercing through the skin. "Ah, that's not all." When Yunjian's fingertips twitched slightly again, the other hand, both legs, the body of the human trafficker, every inch of his bones, shattered and broke apart in utter silence. When Yunjian did not kill him immediately, he was tormenting him, using a slow and cruel method, utterly unlike that of an immortal. He ground a mortal into dust. I was stunned, and for a moment, I forgot to breathe, until the smell of blood mixed with the stench of urine pierced my nostrils, making me retch uncontrollably. When Yunjian casually tossed the lump of flesh into the deepest part of the alley, then, he turned around and walked toward me. The eyes that had been filled with killing intent moments earlier now held a deep stillness when they looked at me. All storms having subsided, he crouched down in front of me, cold fingertips brushed over the bloodstain at the corner of my mouth. "What's the matter, kid? Scared stiff? Listen, you must not tell Lu Qing about this. That stubborn fool would surely lecture me again if he found out I've been killing mortals. Even if the scum was a human trafficker, he'd still think there's a chance for redemption, father." And I had already pounced, wrapping my arms tightly around his neck, when Yunjian's body instantly stiffened. You mere mortal, who is your father? Let go, it's filthy." His body was much colder than that of an ordinary person, and his voice was equally cold, carrying a commanding tone. But I didn't listen, instead burying my face even deeper. My body grew hotter from the earlier struggle. And I placed all my fear and dependence on him. "TSK, mortals are such a hassle," he muttered again in a low voice, a strange sense of bewilderment mingling with his disgust. After a moment of tense silence, when Yunjian ultimately said nothing more, supporting my buttocks with one hand and lifting me up entirely. Clumsy and awkward in his movements, I had to cling tightly to his neck to keep from falling. Returning to the bustling market, Wen Yunjian's goal remained clear. And he finally found the crowfeather cloak I had mentioned. The surface of the black fabric shimmered with an iridescent glow, understated yet exquisitely luxurious. Wen Yunjian was very satisfied and didn't even ask about the price. "I'll take this one, please wrap it up." "All right then." The foreign merchant was beaming with joy as he agreed, when a haughty female voice cut in. "Wait, this dress is what the young lady, saw first." The voice sounded familiar. I cautiously peeked half my head out from Wen Yunjian's embrace. It turned out to be Lu Chuchu, and following behind her was Nai Zifang, with a hint of helplessness and indulgence between his brows. Lu Chuchu had eyes only for that beautiful raven feather garment. She ordered the merchant imperiously, "Drive him away. I want this garment, I'll pay any amount of spirit stones. This is a gift I'm buying for Brother Zifang." Nai Zifang looked at her, his expression complex, but he did not speak up to stop her. Hearing this, Wen Yunjian's fingers, which had been stroking the fabric, paused. Seeing him still holding on, Lu Chuchu immediately raised her delicate eyebrows and stepped forward to snatch it. "Are you deaf? I said this is mine now." Just as her hand was about to touch the hem of the garment, Wen Yunjian finally turned sideways and glanced at her. With just that one glance, Lu Chuchu's outstretched hand froze in mid-air as if frozen. Nai Zifang finally moved at this moment, frowning as he stepped in front of Lu Chuchu, one hand resting on the hilt of his sword. It was only then that he got a clear frontal view of Wen Yunjian and Guya. Nai Zifang and I relied on each other in our youth, so of course he recognized how I looked as a child. However, when he met Wen Yunjian's peach blossom eyes that seemed to smile without smiling, the veins on the back of Nai Zifang's hand bulged, then slowly relaxed. Just 3 breaths later, plop, under everyone's gaze, Nai Zifang, without any warning, lifted the hem of his clothes and slammed his knees onto the bluestone pavement. He knelt down. This kneel was abrupt and resolute, like a sudden clap of thunder on a calm day, drawing all the surrounding gazes. "Senior." Nai Zifang lowered his head, his voice hoarse yet exceptionally clear. "I do not know how Guya has offended you, but I am willing to bear all the blame alone. I only beg for your mercy, to release the spell on her and let her return to her original state." His posture was lowered to the dust. Whispers immediately arose among the onlookers. "Oh my, who is this young master? He actually knelt down in public for a girl. You don't know. He's the young master Nai who saved Miss Lu the other day. He's already a golden core cultivator at such a young age. A man's pride is worth more than gold, and cultivators are even more proud. It seems the rumors are true. Young Master Nai is truly a man of deep loyalty and righteousness." Lu Chuchu stared in disbelief at Nai Zifang kneeling on the ground. "Brother Zifang, get up quickly." She tried to pull him up, but Nai Zifang stopped her with a look. "Oh." When Yunjian raised an eyebrow slightly. Change back." "Change back for what? So I can be gloriously taken as your lowly concubine and then kowtow and serve tea to your beloved?" He paused. "That would truly be an immense honor." Nai Zifang's body suddenly stiffened. The surrounding murmurs felt like countless needles, densely pricking his back. He took a deep breath and spoke again, his tone sincere yet neither subservient nor arrogant. "Senior, you've misunderstood. Guya. She was abandoned as an infant in the mountains and raised by wild wolves. She has no parents, and even her speech and understanding of human affairs were taught to her by me, sentence by sentence. In my heart, she is more like a younger sister to me. All I have done is to give her a stable home, a place where she can live the rest of her life without suffering from wind, snow, hunger, or cold. So I beg you, spare Guya." After saying this, Nai Zifang deeply kowtowed to Wen Yunjian. His forehead struck the bluestone slab with a dull thud. A collective gasp was immediately heard all around. Lu Chuchu could no longer hold back, her face full of heartache. "Enough, what exactly do you want?" With reddened eyes, she pointed at me, her voice sharp and aggrieved. "I fell for Brother Zifang first, but he has always been thinking of this mortal woman, unable to bear her loneliness and helplessness. That's why I agreed to make an exception and take her as a concubine, to give her a lifetime of security." I am the legitimate daughter of the Lu family of Ningbai City. How noble my status is, and she is nothing but a wild mountain woman without even a spiritual root. I don't even mind sharing a husband with a mortal woman. What more could she possibly be unsatisfied with? Does she have to be the main wife and monopolize brothers Afang all to herself, who in Ningbai City doesn't know the prestige of the Lu family? It's said that the Lu family's ancestor achieved immortality centuries ago and has been secretly protecting the entire clan all along. Who would dare provoke them? With Lu Chuchu's words, public opinion completely swung to their side. Exactly. How could a noble young lady like Miss Lu tolerate a wild mountain girl? It's already an immense act of mercy. Truly, greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Being able to become young Master Nai's concubine is a blessing she earned over 8 lifetimes. Yet she still picks and chooses. And here I thought young Master Nai was heartless. But it turns out this girl is just insatiably greedy. That man doesn't look like a good person either. I think he just wants to ruin their perfect match. When Yunjian watched their performance with great interest, until the discussions began to insult him as well, he finally let out a low chuckle. Ha, so this is why I despise mortals the most. When Yunjian's voice was very soft, almost drowned out by the noise. Yet it clearly reached my ears. Every single one of them is an idiot who chases after shadows and drifts with the tide. That guy Lu Qing still insists on saying human nature is inherently good. How utterly foolish. His murmuring voice grew clearer. Maybe I should just pull out all their tongues. And I could feel that the aura around when Yunjian had become even thicker and more turbid. It was almost turning into a demonic aura, falling into demonhood. Lu Qing had said that if Wen Jian continued to be so stubborn, he would eventually fall completely into the demonic path. By then, there would be no turning back. I can't let him fall into demonic ways, at least not now. At the critical moment, I raised my head and reached out to pinch Wen Yunjian's face hard. When Yunjian was stunned, his peach blossom eyes, which were about to be devoured by demonic energy, showing complete astonishment. He probably never imagined that any living being in this world would dare to offend him so boldly. When Yunjian's gaze slowly lowered, landing on my hand that was still in the position of pinching his cheek, then it slowly shifted to my lips, as if contemplating whether to first pull out my tongue to make an example of me. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly covered my mouth with my other hand. Father, my voice came out muffled from my palm. What is the relationship between immortal Lu Qing and the Lu family? They both share the surname Lu. The words Lu Qing acted like a basin of cold water, dousing the demonic flames that were about to ignite within when Yunjian, the thick, suffocating killing intent and malice paused for a moment, then abruptly deflated. At the same time, Lu Chuchu also heard what I said, especially upon hearing the name Lu Qing. She felt as if struck by lightning. You, Lu Chuchu's face turned deathly pale. How could you know? How dare you speak the name of my Lu family's ancestor directly? The surrounding murmurs shifted in tone along with Lu Chuchu's loss of composure. The Lu family's ancestor, that would be the legendary Lu Qing, the immortal venerable who ascended to immortality 1,000 years ago. Ah, I've heard of that too. Legend has it that the ancestor was a once-in-a-millennium prodigy in cultivation. He reached the divine transformation realm by the age of 20 and shattered the void to ascend in a blaze of light in less than 300 years. Oh my. This is the greatest legend of Ningbai City. It's said that even the current head of the Lu family hasn't laid eyes on that ancestor. How could this little girl know about it? Nai Zifang, still kneeling on the ground, lifted his head, his handsome face smudged with dust, filled with disbelief. It was as if he was seeing me for the first time. These discussions, and the admiration and awe for Lu Qing somehow seemed to hit Wen Yunjian's sweet spot. The violent, nearly out-of-control aura around him completely dissipated, replaced by a kind of almost boastful satisfaction. When Yunjian glanced down at me, he chuckled softly, then lifted me a little higher, letting me sit more comfortably in his arms. It also allows me to look down from a high vantage point at Lu Chuchu and Nai Zifang, whose expressions are shifting unpredictably below. You ask how she knows. When Yunjian also glanced at Lu Chuchu, a malicious curve lifting the corner of his lips. Then I'll tell you, this is Guya, the concubine you so magnanimously helped your beloved husband take. the one who kowtowed and served you tea. Not only does she know your family ancestor's name, she was also personally acknowledged as a daughter by your family ancestor. So by this seniority, what should she be to you, and what should you call her? And I don't care about Lu Chuchu. My gaze remains fixed on the figure kneeling on the cold stone floor. The boy who once held me close for warmth in the snowy depths of the mountains, vowing to be with me for a lifetime. I am not your sister, I corrected him word by word. Have you forgotten who dug you out of the snowdrift that winter, who shared the last piece of dry food with you, starving themselves to the point of gnawing on tree bark? Have you forgotten where that half elixir came from, the one that allowed you to step onto the path of immortality? When Yunjian paused slightly at these words, glanced at me and then at Nizafang, frowning and narrowing his eyes, the hand holding mine clearly tightened with displeasure. Nizafang looked up as if still dazed, his eyes meeting mine. You've forgotten everything, Nizafang, you're nothing but an ungrateful wretch, ingrate. Nizafang shuddered violently, his hands clenched into tight fists at his sides, because this word was something he taught me back then. When I brought the saved food to feed the very old mother wolf in return, Nizafang said that in the human world, those who know gratitude but do not repay it are called white-eyed wolves. But now, it was the wolves who raised me, and it is the humans who have betrayed me. You can't bear to part with our past affections, unwilling to bear the stigma of being ungrateful, yet at the same time, you covet the wealth and cultivation resources of the Lu family. Reluctant to let go of the smooth path to immortality that's within your grasp, so you came up with this perfect solution that serves both purposes, didn't you? You say taking me as a concubine is to give me a stable home, to show pity for my loneliness and suffering. How beautifully put. But this is nothing more than the most high-sounding excuse you've found to soothe your own pitiful guilt. You don't want to give me a place to belong. You just want to extricate yourself from the court of public opinion that would brand you as faithless, so you can feel at ease while climbing your way up to your lofty branch. Nizafang, at your core, you are drawn to strength, beyond these deep mountains. I have gone from being a companion who taught you how to survive in the wild to nothing but a burden holding back your future prospects. That's right, everyone is drawn to strength, there's nothing wrong with that. But the purpose of admiring strength isn't to justify abandoning the weak, nor is it to trample upon the kindness that once lifted you up with a clear conscience. These words are not some profound truths, yet, spoken in the childish lisp of a child who appears no more than 5 or 6 years old, they sound particularly ironic, and with each word, Nizafang's face grew a shade paler. Pain, struggle, guilt, a myriad of emotions intertwined in his eyes, ultimately turning into a deep gloom. Lu Chuchu was baffled by the words, but she could sense Nizafang's agitation. She quickly steadied him and retorted anxiously, What nonsense are you spouting? What immortal elixir? Brother Zafang's achievements today are thanks to his own talent and hard work, along with the full support of my Lu family. What does that have to do with a mere mortal like you? Ha, talent and hard work. When Yunjian let out a scornful laugh, fool. Do you really think his mediocre talent alone could have allowed him to break through to the golden core stage? Do you have any idea that just half of that immortal elixir is worth 10 times your entire Lu family? If it has nothing to do with you, then return it to me. I reached out my hand to Nizafang. Spit out that half of the immortal elixir you swallowed, return it to me. Exactly as it was. The entire room fell into dead silence. Return the elixir. Lu Chuchu's face flushed from pale to bright red. Have you lost your mind? Even if it really was some kind of immortal elixir, it's long since merged with his meridians and bones. How could he possibly spit it out? You're clearly just trying to make things difficult. I can make this possible. When Yunjian calmly interrupted her, since he was able to swallow it, he can certainly spit it out. It's nothing more than losing all his cultivation and reverting to his original form. Reverting to that ordinary youth who had to share a piece of dry rations with me, shivering on a winter night. Nizafang's lips were bitten so hard they turned pale, unable to utter a single word. Lose all his cultivation. These 4 words were more painful to him than killing him. How much effort did he put in? How much suffering did he endure, even going so far as to abandon me, just to achieve his current level of cultivation? How could he possibly give up? But if he doesn't give up? He felt the playful yet oppressive gaze from above. making his back prickle as if pierced by needles. He was well aware that the man before him was far more powerful, and might even have some connection to the Lu family's ancient ancestor. As I watched Nizafang trapped in a desperate situation below, I felt no satisfaction, only a cold and desolate emptiness. Nizafang, I'll ask you one more time, will you return it or not? Under the intense gaze of all, Nizafang finally moved, slowly, with great difficulty. He raised his head, he looked up at me, the emotions in his eyes so complex and overwhelming, sincere, painful, and tinged with a hint of hatred. Yes, he hates me for not staying in that mountain, hates me for not obediently accepting the fate of being abandoned, hate that I had to appear at this very moment, tearing all his brilliance and pride to shreds. Guya, Nizafang finally spoke. His voice hoarse, I want to return it, but I can't. The pain in his eyes was almost overflowing. I have my reasons. What kind of difficulty? I pressed further. Nizafang faltered once more, closing his eyes in agony as if uttering another word would shatter him completely. Immediately after, Nizafang suddenly pulled out a jade talisman from his chest and crushed it with force. A flash of white light instantly enveloped him and Lu Chuchu beside him. At the last moment before disappearing, Nizafang took one final look at me. His silent lip movements seemed to say both I'm sorry and wait for me. And when the light faded, the spot was empty, with no one left. When Yunjian did not take me to chase after the two, but instead brought me back to the cave dwelling. Speaking of which, you really knew how to pick back then. When Yunjian reclined on the foxfur couch, propping his head up with one hand, out of so many elixirs. You just had to hide the most powerful one. My heart stirred. The most powerful. What, exactly is it? That elixir is no ordinary thing. When Yunjian's fingers lightly tapped on the armrest of the soft couch, its uniqueness lies in its dual nature, one part yin, one part yang, one half is female, the other male. Only when yin and yang are harmonized, and the female and male forces unite, can its true power be unleashed. He glanced at me. No wonder the two of you, after each taking half, remain so mediocre. One is still immortal without even a spiritual root, completely blocked, and the other, the other barely stepped into the golden core stage. Among mortals, you might be considered top tier, but in our eyes, you're still laughably average. When Yunjian's voice continued, I suspect it was just unfortunate timing. That ungrateful wretch must have swallowed the half that, by chance, contained a trace of pure yang within the yin. A hint of male energy within the female, just enough to complement each other. That's why it helped him cleanse his meridians and greatly boost his strength. His gaze fell upon me, tinged with a hint of frustration at my perceived inadequacy. As for you, the portion you swallowed was likely overwhelmingly yang and rigid, purely masculine without any feminine balance. This energy clashes completely with your mortal female body. It hasn't given you the slightest benefit. Instead, it has thoroughly blocked your own meridians, turning you into a perfect vessel of waste. My mouth fell slightly agape as I listened. So that's why, this is the root cause of my inability to draw in spiritual energy and embark on the path of immortality. Thus, despite having consumed the same immortal pill, I became like a blocked stone, while Nizafang soared to great heights by leveraging the other, albeit incomplete, half, father. Since Nizafang only consumed half of the incorrect pill and is now at the golden core stage, what would happen if someone were to take a whole immortal pill completely? Hearing my extremely natural father, when Yunjian's expression, which was about to turn mocking, froze on his face, he looked at me, and for the first time, a sense of seriousness appeared in those peach blossom eyes that always carried a casual and disdainful air. After a long while, he finally uttered 4 words. A single step to immortality. My eyes widened in shock. Immortality. That was the ultimate goal countless cultivators spent their entire lives striving for, yet it remained beyond their reach, and a single pill can elevate someone to the heavens in one step. Look at your unsophisticated self. How dare you call me daddy? When Yunjian's lips curled back into a sneer, let me tell you, that thing is called half-step immortal. It was left to Lu Qing by a great ancient master. In all the 3 realms and 6 paths, there are probably only 1 or 2 of them left. To refine this pill, one must use the energy of chaos as a catalyst. extract the essence of a phoenix from the highest heavens, supplement it with the heart's blood of a 10,000-year-old demon lord, and combine it with hundreds of long-extinct celestial treasures, then, it must be refined in an 8 trigrams cauldron for hundreds of thousands of years. Such a thing is not something that can be easily replicated by human effort. My heart was pounding with fear, and merely consuming it isn't enough. The heavenly Tao won't let you take such an easy advantage. After that, you must endure hundreds of devastating heavenly thunderbolts. Only by surviving the thunder tribulation can you truly become an immortal. I was stunned for a long time, trying to digest this overwhelming information. Then, the most fundamental question rose to my mind. Then, such a precious elixir, back then, immortal Lu Qing, just gave it to me so casually. My question left Wen Yunjian in silence as well. Who knows what he was thinking? He muttered under his breath, his gaze drifting off into the distance. After all, you did look quite pitiful back then, a tiny little thing, just lying there in the snow, not crying or making a fuss, just quietly nibbling on the snow waiting to die. How could someone like Lu Qing walk away from a scene like that? Wen Yunjian curled his lips. Besides, you little brat, you're really bold. The moment you opened your eyes and saw him, you didn't cry or hide, you just called him Mom right away. He mimicked my childish voice from back then, but it came out rather awkwardly. Yet as soon as that word left his mouth, his own gaze softened slightly. That guy may look pure-hearted like snow, detached and otherworldly, but deep down, he's a madman too. When Yunjian lowered his gaze, almost speaking to himself. He always believed that all mortals are inherently good, even the most heinous individuals deserve a chance to redeem themselves, no matter how great the cost for that so-called opportunity might be. How much more so, then, for an innocent child on the brink of starvation. He raised his eyes to look at me again, a profound melancholy in his peach blossom eyes that I couldn't quite comprehend. So, what's the problem with using a mere half-step immortal pill to save you? I was completely stunned. For a long, long time, I couldn't speak a word. I once thought that only Wen Yunjian was an immortal who didn't act like one, reckless and treating human life as worthless. In his eyes, it seemed all mortals were evil, and killing them all wouldn't matter in the slightest. And now it seems that Lu Qing, finally, I managed to force out a sentence. Father, it seems I've grown taller again. I really was growing taller, and it's growing rapidly. The ruchuan that fit just right last night had sleeves and a hem that were noticeably shorter by this morning. I suppose the shrinking spell that Wen Yunjian cast on me is starting to wear off, and I'm slowly returning to normal, in just over 10 days. My appearance has grown from a young child to a preteen and then to a budding teenager. The baby fat on my features gradually faded, revealing a somewhat delicate and elegant outline, and Wen Yunjian seemed to delight in this change. He even gave up his old habit of buying new clothes for himself, turning instead to this new hobby of dressing me up. So now, I stand before the water mirror. A girl of about 13 or 14 is reflected in the mirror. Her features still carrying a hint of childishness, yet her figure has already grown tall and graceful. Beside the mirror, a tall figure stands with one hand supporting his chin, the other hand comparing two sets of robes back and forth. Father, I've already changed 13 times, I said helplessly. Can we go out to eat now? I'm hungry. What's the rush? Being hungry for a while won't kill you, and the restaurant's doors aren't going to grow legs and run away. Wen Yunjian rolled his eyes at me, but it was clear he had already grown accustomed to being called daddy. He held up the pale yellow gauze dress and another set of water-green silk robes in front of me. Besides, we're heading to the Drunken Fragrance Pavilion later. I was taken aback for a moment, not quite grasping his meaning. What's wrong with Drunken Fragrance Pavilion? The most famous signature dish at Ning Bai City's Drunken Fragrance Pavilion is the crisper-skinned, tender roasted duck. And I am called Guya. Oh, I lifted my gaze to meet Wen Yunjian's mischievously smiling peach blossom eyes. Hey, we're from the same root. Why rush to fry each other? Me, so childish. Besides, duck is just really delicious. When I finally put on the water-green silk dress that Wen Yunjian had picked for me, he first admired it for a while. Then he naturally bent down, stretched out his arms, and was about to lift me up. These days, Wen Yunjian has gotten used to carrying me like this whenever we go out. But immortals are immortals, they learn everything incredibly fast. At first, he would hold me too tightly and it hurt, but later on, his embrace became very comfortable. This time, however, I gently pushed him away. Father, I've grown up now, no need to carry me. When Yunjian's movement froze mid-air, a subtle awkwardness began to permeate the air. I even caught a fleeting glimpse of loneliness on his stunned face. He quickly withdrew his hand and let out an extremely indifferent "oh," but then, I reached out again, slipping my hand into Wen Yunjian's palm. Let's just walk holding hands. When Yunjian's body stiffened for a moment, he lowered his gaze, his eyes falling on our clasped hands. His palm was large, with distinct knuckles. Just a gentle clasp could completely envelop my hand, yet his palm was icy cold, while my small hand was burning hot. As you wish. Sunlight filtered through the mountain mist, warming the earth as it gently showered down. We walked along the path leading to Ningbai City, two figures, one tall, one short, stretching long shadows behind us. When Yunjian's strides were still large, but with him holding my hand, I no longer had to jog to keep up as I used to. I could feel the clumsy strength in his palm, as if he were quietly learning how to hold someone's hand. Father, what does an immortal do every day? When Yunjian was taken aback. As if no one had ever asked him this question before. What can I do? Cultivate, endless cultivation, contemplate the ways of heaven, or just wander around to see if there's anything new in the 3 realms and 6 paths. Unfortunately, after all these years, it's all the same. Mortals are like ants, spending their short lives scheming against each other, utterly boring. So, is that why you always go looking for immortal Lu Qing? Look for him. When Yunjian was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Who said I was looking for him? I was just afraid he'd be too bored all by himself, so I kindly went to keep him company. His excuse sounded so weak even to himself that his voice grew smaller and smaller as he spoke. Besides, he changed the subject. It's all because he's so rigid and boring. If I didn't go find him, he'd turn himself into a stone. Come to think of it. When Yunjian had always despised mortals and was unwilling to have any dealings with them, and that rigid and boring Lu Qing he spoke of was probably the only light in his long and lonely immortal life. I was just thinking when I looked up and saw Wen Yunjian staring at me. Perhaps it was because the sunlight was too warm, but his gaze actually seemed a little tender, like the opposite of loneliness. Father, enough with the chatter. If you say another word, you won't get any of the roast duck later. It really is because the sunlight is too good. The roast duck at Zhuaxiang Lu lives up to its reputation. If it's rushed, then so be it. When Yunjian took a sip of tea, his gaze lazily sweeping over the bustling street below. What kind of fabric is that? I followed his line of sight and saw a peddler carrying a shoulder pole walking past the street corner. The bolts of cloth hanging from the pole shimmered brilliantly in the sunlight, even more exquisite than the crow feather weave we had seen before. But the peddler was walking very fast and was about to disappear into the crowd, when Yunjian immediately stood up, clearly tempted. Rubbing my stomach, I waved weakly. Father, I'm too full to walk, you go ahead by yourself. I'll wait here for you to come back. When Yunjian glanced back at me and snorted, You useless mortal, can't even walk after eating so little. That said, he didn't insist any further. Only tossing out a wait here and don't wander off before vanishing in a flash. The empty private room was left with only me inside. I squinted contentedly, savoring this rare moment of peace. Suddenly, a strange feeling seized me, as if invisible vines had tightly bound my limbs. I was horrified to find myself unable to move or make any sound. A thought flashed through my mind. Was this a trap? The fast-moving peddler and the unusually exquisite fabrics were all bait. It was a diversion tactic. As soon as the thought arose, the door of the private room creaked open. Stepping in against the light were precisely Lu Chuchu and Nai Zefang. Lu Chuchu saw me in this helpless state, a triumphant smile blooming on her face. What's the matter? Speechless, she giggled. Weren't you quite the eloquent one at the market the other day, even daring to bring up my family's ancestor to pressure me? Why have you turned mute now? Lu Chuchu walked up to me, looking down from above. Did you think that with that man protecting you, you could rest easy? What a pity. Even immortals are human, and they have their weaknesses. Isn't he particularly fond of those beautiful clothes? I'll let him see his fill. And behind her, Nai Zefang stood in silence, Those eyes that were once brimming with starlight were now veiled by a heavy shroud of guilt and resolve. At the same time, Lu Chuchu had already taken out a palm-sized, three-legged cauldron from her storage bag. The small cauldron was entirely crimson, its surface engraved with intricate and mysterious runes. The moment it appeared, the temperature in the entire private room seemed to rise by several degrees. This is the Lu family's treasure, the heart-refining cauldron. Lu Chuchu shook it gently. It can refine the essence of all things in the world for one's own use. It's time for that half of the immortal pill inside you to return to its rightful owner. What? It was only then that Nizafang finally moved. He stepped forward, reached out, and gently touched my cheek with his fingertips. Guya, I'm sorry. His voice was soft and hoarse, as if he was struggling to suppress something. But I had no other choice. With that, Nizafang's fingers shifted the spell, and the crimson heart-refining cauldron hovered above my head, slowly rotating. An indescribably scorching force poured down from the cauldron, like a red-hot branding iron, instantly piercing my heart. Pain, so much pain. Every inch of my meridians is burning, every drop of blood is boiling. My body convulsed violently, blood uncontrollably seeping from my eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. I wanted to struggle, to cry for help, but not a sound could escape my throat. I couldn't even pass out, forced to endure every shred of agony as if my heart were being dug out alive. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts so much. Father, Father, save me. I called out that name over and over in my heart, but I knew he couldn't hear me. When Yunjian was probably still picking out fabrics for me at that very moment, Lu Chuchu was also frightened by my miserable state. She never expected the artifact to have such a cruel effect. Watching me bleeding from all 7 orifices and convulsing in agony on the ground, Lu Chuchu panicked. Zafang, brother. Her voice trembled as she instinctively moved to intervene. Maybe we should just stop. She looks like she's about to die. Don't look. Nizafang, however, grabbed Lu Chuchu's wrist, pulling her behind him and blocking her view. His voice was terrifyingly calm, yet laced with a coaxing, almost bewitching tone. Chuchu, listen to me. We're about to become cultivation partners. What's mine is yours. Think about it. Once I merge with the complete core power within her, my cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds. By then, who in the entire cultivation world would dare look down on me? Who would dare disrespect the Lu family? Lu Chuchu hesitated. The fear and reluctance in her eyes were gradually shaken by the beautiful future Nizafang had painted. In the end, her hope for the future overcame that sliver of conscience. She bit her lower lip, then finally turned away, unable to bear watching the bloody and cruel scene any longer. Seeing that Lu Chuchu no longer objected, Nizii finally turned his gaze back to me. At this moment, the lines of his brows and eyes softened once more. I'm sorry, Guya. He crouched down and gently wiped the blood-stained tears from my face. His movements so tender it was as if we were still the 2 youths who relied on each other for survival deep in the mountains. I know you hate me, but I truly have my reasons, and someday I will explain everything to you clearly. In the future, I will make it up to you, with my whole life. I swear. As his words faded, I felt a sharp, intense pain in my heart. It was as if something of vital importance had been completely hollowed out. At the same time, the refining heart cauldron's light blazed intensely. A blood-red pill, radiating a vast aura of life, slowly emerged from my chest. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. It hurts. The excruciating pain reached its peak at this moment. Then, my world fell into complete silence. I could no longer feel pain, nor could I feel my own body. My soul drifted like a wisp of smoke, floating in midair, only able to watch everything happening below. Nizafang didn't immediately tend to the blood pill. Instead, he first picked up my lifeless body and held it tightly in his arms. Then, he extended his other trembling hand to take the blood-red elixir floating in the air. He lowered his head, and his murmuring lips pressed against my forehead. Then, Nizafang swallowed the blood elixir without hesitation, with his other hand forming a seal. A violent spatial fluctuation enveloped me. Brother Zafang. It was only then that Lu Chuchu turned around in shock, but before her, there was already no one in sight. The heavens and earth changed color. The moment Nizafang swallowed that blood pill, The sky over Ningbai city was shrouded in thick tribulation clouds. The heavenly tribulation of ascending to immortality in one step is far more formidable than that of ordinary cultivators, yet I was taken away by Nizafang. He placed my body in a secluded and remote cave. The cave entrance was layered with multiple barriers he had set up, yet my spirit, as ethereal as a wisp of smoke, still followed him, following him back to the Lu residence. The Lu household was caught completely off guard and thrown into chaos. Heavenly tribulation. It's a heavenly tribulation. Who is undergoing a tribulation at this moment? The direction seems to be right above our mansion. Hurry, go report to the family head. Activate the mountain protection array. But the next second, hundreds of apocalyptic lightning bolts tore through the sky, carrying the power to annihilate all creation, crashing down toward Nizafang's location. Boom, under the heavenly lightning, all beings are equal, every member of the Lu family, whether they were cultivators with cultivation or unarmed servants and maids, were torn to shreds and turned to charcoal under this heavenly might. This was no longer a tribulation crossing, but a one-sided slaughter with the heavenly might as the blade. Nizafang ultimately withstood all the heavenly tribulations. When the final heavenly thunder dissipated, he was no longer a golden core cultivator. Mighty immortal power surged through his limbs and bones. His immortal bones had formed, ascending to immortality in a single step. Then, in the same instant, Nizafang opened his eyes, his pupils now transformed into pure darkness. In that moment, he fell into demonhood. Nizafang had ascended to immortality. He also, at the moment of ascending to immortality, unhesitatingly fell into the demonic path. When Lu Chuchu rushed back to the Lu family in a disheveled state, what she saw was a scene of utter hell on earth. Nizafang was in the midst of a bloody massacre, and the Lu family had long since become a sea of blood. Lu Chuchu stood there in a daze. She couldn't believe that the demonic god before her, resembling a wrathful Azura, was the same Zafang who had just moments ago promised her a beautiful future. Lu Chuchu screamed with heart-wrenching agony, "Nizafang, what are you doing? Stop it now." But Nizafang did not stop. He raised his hand and swung the blade down. "This is retribution." What? Lu Chuchu's eyes widened. Back then, my clan was just the same, slaughtered to the last by a mad cultivator. My parents pushed me out the door, and I watched them fall in a pool of blood. I ran for my life, but that beast still caught up with me. He caught up with me at the edge of the cliff, severed my meridians with a single sword strike, and kicked me down into the bottomless abyss. He thought I was done for, either dashed to death or frozen alive, but he never expected that my fate was not meant to end. As I lay waiting for death at the foot of the cliff, I was picked up by Guya, who was still a little wild child back then. Later, she even gave me half of an immortal elixir, which not only healed my severed meridians but also set me on the path of immortality. At that time, I truly believed that heaven was kind to me. It took everything from me, yet it brought Guya to my side. I thought to myself, let it be all that blood-soaked vengeance, just forget it. All I wanted was to live a good life with her.
Venerable Lu Qing, your kindness, your compassion, it has always been from your own lofty height. Never once have you truly considered us ants beneath your feet, not even for a moment. Then he turned to Wen Yunjian. And you, aren't you the one who despises mortals the most, who thinks our lives are cheaper than ants? What, now that this little beast is gone, you're more agitated than anyone, and you keep saying she's your daughter. Are you even worthy? What do your joys and sorrows, your grudges and affections, have to do with the common people of this world? You two, one is heartless, the other is cruel. You are utterly unworthy of being immortals. For the first time, a crack appeared in the indifference and calmness in Lu Qing's eyes, a faint sound of faith-shattering. Wen Yunjian simply couldn't listen to Nizafang's heart-piercing words. Shut up, he charged at Nizafang, his killing intent fully exposed. What difference is there between you and us, you ungrateful wretch? You betrayed Guya after using her, and your pitiful background doesn't absolve you of your crimes in the slightest. This rhetorical question abruptly cut off Nizafang's laughter. When it came to hurting me, he had no defense, his guilt was beyond pardon. Nizafang's eyes dimmed as he murmured softly. The voice was so faint it could be blown away by a gust of wind, yet it clearly reached my ethereal soul. It is I who have wronged you. If there is a next life, in the next life, I will make it up to you. As the words fell, the demonic energy around Nai Zafang began to gather and compress at an unprecedented, frenzied pace. His body started to glow, a terrifying energy capable of annihilating the very heavens and earth brewing within him. He's going to self-destruct. He intended to take these two immortals, along with this land that bore his hatred and resentment, to perish together. Madman, when Yunjian cursed in anger, immediately setting up a defensive barrier. However, Lu Qing was faster than him. At the critical moment when Nai Zafang self-destructed, Lu Qing made a choice that when Yunjian never expected. He neither defended nor retreated. Instead, he held my body, gathering all his immortal power into a protective barrier, enveloping my soul within it. He abandoned all possibility of self-preservation, using all his strength to protect a mortal whose soul had separated from their body. Lu Qing, when Yunjian shouted, Nai Zafang watched this scene. His dark demonic eyes flickering with astonishment before turning into a deeper self-mockery. Ha ha ha, what a celestial being, what a redemption. He smiled, the last tear of blood trickling from the corner of his eye. In the next second, a world-destroying light devoured everything. When I opened my eyes again, the world was a blur of soft light. Memory is like a field covered by a heavy snowfall, so clean that nothing remains, and before my eyes, a crudely stitched, rather ugly wolf-shaped cloth doll was gently swaying. Its eyes were crookedly embroidered with black thread, looking quite comical. I averted my gaze and saw the face behind the doll. That was an extremely handsome face, with a pair of captivating eyes fixed intently on me. Little duck, look what this is. He shook the doll in his hand. Do you like it? Your father made this for you with his own hands. Ahem. Call me daddy. Come on, call me daddy. I blinked my eyes, lowered my head, and saw my own pair of hands. That is a pair of pink, tiny, baby hands. My mind was filled with blankness, and my throat emitted meaningless babbling sounds. Then, I raised my hand, a sharp smack sound, a loud slap landed squarely on Wen Yunjian's face. The world fell silent for 3 seconds. Wen Yunjian was stunned at first, his peach blossom eyes filled with utter astonishment. He had probably imagined 10,000 different reactions I might have upon waking up. But he never expected it to be such a clean, sharp slap. But unexpectedly, he didn't get angry at all. When Yunjian carefully caught my little hand that was still waving in the air, wrapping it in his own cool yet broad palm, then he leaned down and gently rubbed the back of my hand with the tip of his nose. A tickling sensation spread through me. Oh, our little duck is so clever. Just woke up and already knows how to hit people. His tone was incredibly gentle. But remember, it's okay for daddy to let you hit him, but not others. You're practically half an immortal now, with an extraordinary physique. You could kill someone with a single slap, understand? I tilted my head, looking at him with a mix of understanding and confusion. When Yunjian sighed and picked me up, his movements exceptionally gentle, as if afraid of hurting me. It's just as well that you remember nothing. He looked down at me, his gaze as complex as a night sky filled with stars, tender, yet veiled with an unyielding sorrow. He began to tell me a distant story, intermittently. He said that in a terrible great war long ago, my body was destroyed, leaving only a fragile wisp of a soul. It was another immortal in white who used all his strength to barely protect my soul intact. Later on, Father used the celestial herb soul-returning grass from the highest heavens to reshape a new body for you, then placed you in the jade pool beyond the 9th heaven, soaking you day and night with every immortal elixir and pill I could find for 81 days. Only then did you finally awaken. His narration was calm, without embellishing the hardships and dangers involved. I stared at him, not blinking. When Yunjian seemed to understand the look in my eyes, he remained silent for a moment before speaking slowly. That man named Nai Zafang, he is dead. He detonated his immortal essence along with the demonic energy, reduced to ashes. His soul scattered to the winds. From then on, throughout the 3 realms and 6 paths, there would be no reincarnation for him, no chance of rebirth for all eternity. All his grudges, all his hatred, came to an absolute end. As for Lu Qing, mentioning this name, when Yunjian's expression grew even more complex, he raised his hand and touched his nose. He said that Lu Qing, in order to protect my soul, abandoned all defense and took that blow head-on. Although he survived, too much demonic energy flooded into his body, and the unwavering conviction he had always held was completely shaken in that tragedy. So, he fell into demonhood. When Yunjian's voice was so faint it was almost inaudible as he uttered these 3 words, fell into demonhood. I widened my eyes slightly and let out a questioning murmur. When Yunjian understood my confusion and continued to explain, a faint, somewhat helpless yet amused smile curling at the corner of his mouth. He said that although Lu Qing had fallen into demonhood, shrouded in demonic energy, the things he did were more righteous than 99% of the so-called immortals in this world. He still wandered everywhere, saving the dying and healing the wounded, enlightening the wicked. It's just that he no longer preached those abstract, lofty principles, but instead used a more direct, more human way. He would hang the mountain bandits on the city gates for 3 days and nights, making them taste utter humiliation, and he would also strip the wealth of deceitful merchants who swindled the poor out of their life-saving money, forcing them to experience the bitterness of hunger and cold, over time. The common folk who had received his kindness began to call him the demon immortal, making the reputation of the demon cult in the mortal world unprecedentedly positive, leaving the actual demon leaders utterly bewildered. When Yunjian couldn't help but laugh as he spoke, though his laughter carried a hint of melancholy. As for the old fossils in the immortal realm, they absolutely dare not take in a fallen demon, but the demons in the demon realm are also deeply troubled. They simply can't figure out whether this guy, who constantly goes around performing acts of chivalry, is a spy sent to convert them or an ambassador here to boost the demon cult's brand image. That rigid and aloof Lu Qing, the only one who could bring a splash of color to his endless immortal life. In the end, he was too busy to pay him any more attention. When Yunjian held me tighter once again, his movements were far more skilled than before, gentle yet firm, like a true father. When you grow a little older and your body is more stable, I can take you to see him, if by then you still wish to see me in him. After saying this, he lifted me high into the air, as if holding the most precious treasure in the world. Sunlight streamed down from the dome of the cave dwelling, falling into my eyes, untainted by dust. Guya, he called my name, his voice carrying a kind of anticipation I had never heard before. What kind of immortal do you think you will become in the future? The end.